Okay, welcome you guys to my new video tutorial about equations. This is the third video, but it belongs to the second video about quadratic equations. Today we want to learn how to really apply the things that we learned in the second video about solving the quadratic equation. Now we actually want to do it, okay? Now, I have prepared some examples for you guys, so you can have a look at them and just train them on your own. If you like, you can just copy the first line and then hit pause and then try to solve it on your own, and then look if this is really how it should be solved, okay? Now I'll be starting off and just doing the simple steps that we learned before with telling you what I do actually, okay? The first step is just writing down the line, the equation, okay, line 1. Now line 2 is only one little thing that we modify here is the x squared stays like it is. Now we do plus 2 and divided 2 here. The 3 stays the same and the x stays the same. Remember, the 2 divided 2 is just to make it look more similar to the perfect square, okay? Now 2 dividing by 2 doesn't change anything, so this is just 1 actually. Now minus 1 is equal to 0, so right hand side, nothing changed. Now with the second part, what we have to do is we just have to complete the square, okay? You see in the third line the x squared stays the same, and 2 times 3 halves x also stays the same. We just have to add something, okay? The something is 3 halves, because this is this part here in between of the 2 and the x. We have to put it, we have to add it with squared, and then we have to subtract it so that the equation stays in balance. Okay, now the last thing is we just copy this minus 1 from here and we have actually equals to 0. Now what we do is I have shown with the curly braces here, this just says that this part above 2, so x squared plus 2 times 3 halves x plus 3 halves squared is just the binomial formula. Okay, and you can squeeze this into this expression. Very, very easy. Now this here, the right hand side here, not the right hand side, but this side here, just stays like it is, equals to 0. Next step, what we're gonna do is we just transfer this thing here to the right hand side, changing the sign. So this will become plus 3 halves squared and this will become plus 1. Okay? Now we have this line here, and I just want to go here down a bit so you can have a view on what happens here next, okay? You tilted this a bit. Okay, now we're actually in this line, and the next thing that you have to do is to take the square root. Remember, always taking even roots like 2, 4, 6 and so forth. You have to remember to put in here a plus minus, because there are 2 solutions that solve this. For example, for x squared equals 1, you can hit in, you can compute in minus 1 or plus 1. It will both solve this. Now because we took the square root on both sides, this is just this part x1 2, because we have 2 solutions, the plus and the minus solution, and plus 3 halves. And here below the square root I've rewritten this. This is 9 is just 3 squared divided 2 squared, so 4 plus 1. Now in the next step I'm just putting this constant part 3 halves to the right hand side. Do not mix it up with the constant part from before. It's just constant because it's 3 halves. I put it to the right hand side. I get minus 3 halves plus minus under the square root 9 over 4 plus 4 over 4. So I just rewritten 1 to 4 over 4. It doesn't change anything. If you divide 4 with 4, you get just 1. So this was just to have same denominators, okay? Now next step, I'm just rewriting this stuff because it didn't change, plus minus, and under the square root I can add 9 and 4, making this 13, and we have 4 in the denominator, and taking the square root of 4 will give you just 2. Okay, now the last thing that you could do is just bring this all onto one fraction, is minus 3 plus minus square root of 13 divided with 2. Okay, so let's just continue and look what happens further. Okay, what happens further. Okay. Okay, this is the second example. I will just put it in the right place. Okay, now let's begin again. We have here now a bracket. Okay, x times, open the bracket, x plus 1, close the bracket, equals 3x squared plus 2. Okay, now the first step that you have to do here is always when you have brackets and you don't see something cleverly to do, just multiply all brackets out here, but only here when solving quadratic equations or equations in general. So you multiply everything out, you get x times x, this is just x squared, x times 1, you get x. On the right hand side we couldn't do anything really. Okay, now what we do is we bring everything to one side. In the videos before I told you always to bring everything to the left hand side, but you can also do this to the right hand side, doesn't make any difference. Okay, because you can switch the positions of the equations. You can read it from right to left or from left to right. Okay, so let's just get them over there. This x squared, so we have 3x squared minus x squared, giving you only 2x squared. We have this will be coming here minus x, and the 2 just says 2. Okay, now what we do next, this step, I hope you remember, this is the normalization of your polynomial. For doing this you have to divide with the leading coefficient. So this is 2, this is 2, so you have to divide with 2. Leading coefficient is always of the highest power, so we divide with 2 in order to get this equation. So 0 equals x squared minus 1/2 x plus 1. Okay, this is the solution that we the equation that we now have. The next step is, so this was normalization, and now we do completing the square. X squared minus 2 divided with 2. Okay, this is our step. We just rewrite the 1 with 2 divided with 2, and the 1/2 just stays here in the back. Okay, this above will stay here, times x plus 1. Now what we do next is we just complete the square by putting here, this is 1/2 times 1/2 will give you 1/4, 1/4. Now you have to put this squared in, so you have to bring in its square and then minus its square again, and then plus 1. Okay, this is just to keep the equation in balance, because this 1/4 squared was not in the equation, so but we put it in there, so we have to subtract it again. Okay, let's go up a bit. Okay, now we did this, and the next step is just to put this stuff to the left hand side, making this minus 1/16. Okay, it was minus over 16, but it will become plus 1/16, and this plus 1 will become minus 1. Okay, and on this hand you can just try to remember that this is the curly braces that you have, they will give you this complete square. It is x minus, because we have here a minus 1/4, which is just this here squared. Okay, now in the next step we would have to take the square root, but you see here we have 1/16 minus 1 which will just result in minus 15/16, but you cannot take the square root of something that is negative. But if this would be possible, you would just do square root plus minus, because it's the square root, and then plus this 1/4 here. Okay, but you cannot do that. Okay, Now let's go to example 3. Slightly harder, but still not very hard. This is x squared plus 4x plus 6 equals 2. Okay, remember the first step is to put everything to one side. Okay, you bring this 2 to this side, so you have x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. Now we complete the square. X squared plus, I multiply with 2 and I divide with 2, having 4 over 2, and then x plus 4 equals 0. Now again, if you look at this, this is x squared plus 2 times something times x. If we have this something squared in here, this squared in here, and we subtract it again, we can complete the square. And why do I have here 2? Because it's 4 over 2, making this only 2. So we have x squared plus 2 times 2 times x plus 2 squared minus 4 plus 4 equals 0. Okay, very easy. Now you see here what happens here is minus 4 plus 4. This will result in 0, so this is not important for us anymore. And this will be completed as a square, which will give you x plus 2 squared equals 0. Now this is the step which might confuse you, but you should not allow this to confuse you a lot, because I'm taking the square root. Remember always when taking the square root to hit in the plus minus sign here before. The square root of 0, this is looking awkward, but the square root of 0 is, it just means which number have you to take the square of it to get 0, and this is 0 itself. Okay, so this will get you 0. And you have x plus 2. I left out the 1, 2 here, so the two solutions to that problem. I take this plus 2 and bring it to the right hand side, so we have x equals to minus 1. So in this case you would have let's look at this determinant. Let's have a look at the determinant. Maybe the determinant is calculated by b squared, which is the linear part, squared. This is plus 4, so we have to make plus 4 squared minus 4 times the quadratic coefficient, but we have a normalized equation, so this is just 1. I'll write it down anyway. And we have the constant term, which is just 4. Now look what happens, you get 0, so this is actually really one solution. Okay, one solution. Now let's continue. Okay, I will flip this here so you can have a look at the next examples. This is a slightly more complicated equation. I hope I can get it in. So yeah, okay, now this is looking very complicated, but it actually is not, because it's a simple equation, quadratic equation, and will turn out to be a quadratic equation. Okay, and now we just multiply this out, x. So first step is, if you see some brackets, multiply them out. X times x will give you x squared, x times 1 give you x. X squared is just taken into here. Now we have x times x, which give you x squared. We have 2 times x, which will give you this. We have 3 times x, which will give you 3x, and 3 times 2, which will give you 6. Okay. On the right hand side, we have x squared minus x squared minus 4x. Okay, because this is minus 4x. Okay. Now what you do now is just you put everything together that you can. Okay, we'll look here. We have 1x, 3x, 1x squared, 3x squared, and 1x squared, making this in total 5x squareds. Now let's look how many x's we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 3x, and the constant term is just here 6. Okay, on the right hand side we'll look that this x squared and this x squared just eliminate each other, and we only stay with minus 4x. We write down the minus 4x here, and next step is just you remember when you have reduce something that is written down, then put everything to the left hand side so we can have a real view with this. Okay, we put this here, minus 4x will change its sign, become plus 4x, so that we get 6 plus 4x, 10x. Remember to sort them always, the terms here, x squared, x, and the constant term, always do that, always starting with the highest power equals 0. Now, let's look how we can solve this. Okay, I will just show you the first way. This is the easiest way and the fastest way actually. You just use the general solution. The general solution states that x12, you can have two solutions, is equal to minus 10, which is just the b, because b is plus 10, you will get minus 10, plus minus the square root of 10 squared, so this is still b squared, minus 4a and c, okay, and this is all divided with 2 times a, which is just 5. Now you calculate through this stuff and you get here 10, you get plus minus under the square root 100 minus 120, this is over 10. Then you can see that this is equal if you have, you can split the fraction, so you have minus 10 over 10, which will just give you minus 1, plus minus, here under the square root you will get minus 20 over 10, and minus 20 is a negative square root, so this is just a contradiction. You cannot solve this. This has no solution. You could have done this with a determinant. Actually, we have the determinant, it's minus 20, and the minus 20 is because it's b squared minus 4ac. This is the determinant, this is minus 20, this is negative, no solutions. Now this was the first way, you can see, first way. Now let's look how this looks like if we go for the second way. This is just completing the square, okay? First we have written down this, so 5x squared plus 10x plus 6. We normalize this by dividing with 5 because this is the quadratic coefficient. We normalize this and you get 1 because it's 5 over 5. X squared plus 2x plus 6 over 5 equals 0. Now we do this little needy trick. I know you do not need to do this to find out that this is 2 times 1, but I do it just because of consistency, okay? X squared plus 2 times 2, this is just staying like it is, and divide with 2, because 2 divided with 2 just gives you 1, times x plus 6 over 5 equals 0. Now we see that this part above, it will just give you x plus 2 times 1 times x, and we need to introduce this for completing the square. 1 squared, because it's a balance, you have to also minus 1 squared, okay? Plus 6 over 5 equals 0. Now we can, like the curly brace shows, this expression is equal to this. This is just a formula, x plus 1 squared plus, so minus 1 plus 5 over 6 over 5 will give you 1 over 5 equals 0. Now you bring this 1 over 5 to the right hand side and you take the square root of this, and seeing that you have a negative square root, okay, then you put this minus to there. Why I do this, normally you could stop in here, you could say this is a contradiction, you cannot take a negative, but I will show you that this is actually equal to them. x12 is equal to minus 1 plus minus under the square root minus, now let's we had here minus 1 over 5. I just multiplied the fraction with 20 and divided it with 20, so we got this. And if you look in the denominator, we have 5 times 20, which will just give you 100 or 10 squared, so you can take the square root and get this equation, which is just turning out to be the same as we had done before with that, okay? Now let's go to the last example. This last example introduces also a rule that I always teach my pupils, that you should look for fractions, and if there are fractions, eliminate these. Okay, let's first look at this equation. It's 3 over x plus x over 5 equals 2. Okay, now first what you realize is, because this is the denominator is variable, we have to set it to say that this is unequal 0, or you will divide with the 0. Okay, now in the next step we have to multiply this with 5x. Why 5x? Because if we we multiply this with 5, this fraction will go away, but this will still stay. So we will have 15 over x plus x equals 10. So we have to also multiply this with the other denominator. The trick is just to multiply with all the denominators that you see. Okay, now you get this here. 2 times 5 times x will just give you on the right hand side a 10x. On the left hand side you will have 15x over x, which because the x is unequal to 0, this will go away, plus here on this side is x times, so you will get 5x squared over 5 will just give you x squared equal to 10. Okay, now we bring the 10x to the left hand side and we sort them with descending powers, x squared minus 10x, because this was brought here, it will change the sign, plus 15 equals 0. Now if you look at it, you should realize that you need no normalization, because the coefficient of the quadratic part is just equal to 1. Okay, now after having realized this, what we do next is we complete the square. You could also use the general formula and you would end up with the same result, but we will do this with completing the square because it's just for the exercise. Okay, x squared minus 2, and we divide this with 2 again, and the 10 is just from here and the x is from here, plus to complete the square we have to add 10 over 2 squared minus 10 over 2 plus 15 equals 0. Okay, this is just the plus and minus. This here is just to keep the balance. Okay, the balance is very important. Hope you can read it. Okay, now this will complete the square. As 10 over 2 is just 5, you will get x minus 5 squared minus 25, because this is 5 squared, plus 15 which is equal to 0. Now minus 25 plus 15 will give you a minus 10. Bringing it to the right hand side will give you a negative sign. Okay, now we are ready to solve. We just take the square root. Remember, always I teach my pupils to put in here plus minus square root of 10. The minus 5 will come to the right hand side. So we have x12 equals plus 5 plus minus square root of 10. This is the solution. And you see the determinant of this would have to be positive. Okay, because if this was not positive, this would not give you this result. So you have 2 valid solutions. Okay, guys, this was it. These were 5 examples how to solve quadratic equations. In the following videos, I will describe you guys how to use special techniques like substitution. This is a very handy and very powerful technique. I will talk about special theorems, about solutions of polynomials. These theorems can also be applied to quadratic equations. This is the theorem of Vieta and so forth. I will just give you a slight view on them, and then in the third video after that I will teach you the polynomial division, how to divide polynomials. This is a very important part in solving polynomials of higher degrees than 2, or actually higher than 5, because there are exact solutions for polynomials of third degree and fourth degree. These videos will be my last videos about the cubic equation and the quadratic equation. So I hope you liked my videos. I hope you had a lot of fun. You understood a lot more than before, and you can now finally solve quadratic equations, be it by the means of this completing the square, which is a very important thing to study, or by using the formula. Just look what you feel more comfortable with, and if you want to, if you didn't understand something, just review the video. I'm trying to explain it as full as I can. Then if you still have questions, just comment and I will try to answer them pretty fast. Okay, thank you a lot, guys. See you.